evening, everyone. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do a quick roll call. Gardner, here. Christie?
Here.
Deegan?
Here.
Pomelo?
Here.
Strubing? Excused. Thomas?
Here.
Watson?
Here.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out for the monthly workshop. I apologize for my voice. I do have a cold in the middle of July. Go figure, right? I'll do my best to talk and do everything. Before we have our presentation, I just want to say that if we can, as council members, keep all questions until the end. I think we'll have a question, and as the presentation goes along, that question could get answered. So there's no sense of stopping the presentation and asking a bunch of questions and things like that. We'll have the presentation, and then we'll have questions from the community, and then questions from the council. Sound good? All right. Whoever is here to present, if you could come up, introduce yourself.
And staff is over there. They can.
Are you? You're starting?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
gonna start. I go up to the.
No, you can stay there.
Yeah,
Zach, you stay right there, man. I thought it was somebody from out here. No worries.
No, good evening, everyone. I appreciate everyone making it out tonight. Since the spring of '24, town staff of the comp plan committee and the consultant, which is North Star, represented by Charles to my right, have been working on a new plan for the town since the old plan was approximately 19 years old. A lot's changed in Standish since 2006, so it was a good time to do the plan. And just as a quick aside for anybody here, the comp plan is made up of a few things. One, a vision statement, kind of a guiding vision for the town. We tried to do as much survey outreach as we could around that visioning and getting as much feedback from the residents around that statement, and I think we got a good one out of it. The plan is also made up of a bunch of topics such as housing, transportation, natural resources, fiscal health of the town, things like that. So it kind of gives a snapshot of where the town is today. And then also, but I think two of the most important things, two of the most important parts of the plan are the goals and policies as well as the future land use map. And those things start to look forward, into the future about where the town's going. And we've been spending about a year getting all this into the plan, and I want to say that we're still accepting comments. So if anybody's listening out there, we're still happy to accept comments. If you go to www.imaginestandish.com, the plan is still there to view. There's still a form up for that review. I guess we'll be accepting comments through August. Yeah. Through August, and we're certainly happy to hear any feedback tonight as well. So a draft of that plan was submitted to the state in late June, I believe, and they must make a finding of consistency with the Growth Management Act from their end, and we anticipate the state approval in September. But again, that doesn't mean things can't change with the plan before then. And then, so before Charles starts to give a quick presentation, I just wanted to say thank you to the committee for their work on this, as well as North Star and Charles for your work. It was, it's not a light commitment, and so again, thank you to those folks and your knowledge and your dedication as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, give me 1 second just to get this presentation going. I'll do this. Hey, can everyone hear me? Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So I'm Charles Tettleman, a senior planner with North Star Planning, and I will just echo that this committee has been great to work with over the last year or so. I would even say a year and a half, 18 months. Through this, we've had meetings once a month. We've held 2 public workshops in Standish, one for visioning, one for future land use. And we've had a lot of great conversations on inventory chapters, goals, policies, and strategies. What I want to kind of go through today are kind of key elements of the plan. While we can't go through all of it in one meeting, I can assure that I think the committee has discussed almost each section entirely and has had good conversations, input, and revisions. So this is just an overview of what we're doing, and I'll keep it as short as possible so we can get into conversation, talking about questions, and I can get to answering them. There are really 2 parts to this plan. There's a front section and an appendix. The front section really talks about where we've been, so an overview of previous planning. It contains a vision statement, a future land use plan and narrative, goals, policies, and strategies, and then public participation summary, which I'll get to more in a second, and an implementation process and table. The appendix is where you'll see the 12 inventory chapters, and for those who aren't familiar, the state of Maine has guidelines on how to get a state consistent comprehensive plan. While it's not a requirement to have a comprehensive plan in state law, to have a state consistent comp plan unlocks a lot of different things, such as fundings, CBDG grants, and other opportunities like building ordinances around impact fees. There are 12 inventory chapters that are required by the state to be consistent, and those are found in the appendix. They're all 10 to 15 to 20 pages each, with a lot of data in there from the state and from other sources that kind of gives a brief, I would say brief for each section, look at the town from population growth projections, historical economic data, housing data, and kind of looking at like public facilities, fiscal capacity, and existing land use. Also, the other 3 items in the appendix are the public participation summary, so it's an overview of the visioning survey, the visioning workshop, the future land use workshop, and any other feedback we've received throughout this process, and as well as an implementation table, which I will show later. I want to start off with the future land use plan. I should have put in what the future land use plan in 2006 was, but I'm sure some in this room are familiar with it. The previous plan was really focused around the villages, Steep Falls, Standish Corner, Sebago Lake Village. But what we heard in feedback and with conversations with the committee and the public is that the growth has kind of gone on everywhere in Standish. It's been hard to control it in the rural areas, and it's not as dense and developed kind of in the growth areas or the transition zones. So after conversations with staff, committee, members of the public, we really crafted a future land use plan that looks at the Sebago Lake Village and Standish Corner as the 2 primary areas for growth in Standish. Both of them are treated a little bit differently. Standish, more of the commercial development, standard, like this is where we want a little bit denser housing, but Sebago Lake Village is still a growth area, but is focused on maintaining that village charm. One thing that we did talk about kind of after the future land use workshop is the Watchuk transition corridor. So we know that Watchuk Lake is a very important part of this town as a natural resource, a recreation spot. But there's also a decent bit of economic activity that does, will, and could occur here. While it's not necessarily a growth area where we want to channel infrastructure investments and things like that, it does have the good bones, I think was the conversation, for increased economic activity, supporting recreational activity, and just serving a lot of residents who live over there. The final 2 pieces here is the Saco-Manchester Roads Rural Crossroad and the Steep Falls Rural Crossroad. The Steep Falls Rural Crossroad was part of a lot of discussions. Originally, it was in a growth area earlier at the stages of this plan, but after conversation, we came to the conclusion, I say we as the committee, staff, and Nordstar, that area might not be the best for incredible investments, infrastructure to support increased zoning or increased densing, increased housing, increased development. And similar to Saco-Manchester Roads, We know that that area has a lot of opportunity for development. There has already been a little bit of infrastructure with right around the roundabout there, things like that. What I don't have here is a narrative that kind of goes into detail about what type of growth should occur in the Standish Corner growth area and the Sebago Lake Village growth area, but that's in the chapters as well. One thing I will go, and I will switch my screen over in a second, and then Zach alluded to this, are the goals, policies, and strategies in the comprehensive plan, and those are reflected in the implementation table. That's what's achievable. One thing we talked about, I don't know if the committee remembers this, 17 months ago, was what do you not like about the current comprehensive plan? And it was simply not achievable. It was really aspirational. And in 2006, it was a really great idea to have a railroad stop in Standish. Things didn't pan out that way. There's no railroad connections in Maine, really, for that commuter transport. And we wanted to make sure that the way we're going with these goals, policies, and strategies bring us to a really achievable spot, something that in 10, 15 years, we can look back on this plan and say, yeah, these were achievable, we can do this. That doesn't mean there aren't aspirational things in the plan. And I will just pivot over to the actual comprehensive plan document just for a second. Sorry, I didn't pull it up right away. And I want this one. So each goal, and I'll focus on this one, the reinvest in villages and improve connections, just has goals, policies, and strategies. And what I mean by that is that each goal has 3 to 4 policy areas that's nestled under there, and then within those policies is where the strategies are. So for goal 2, reinvest in villages and improve connections, one of the first policies is enhance and reinvest in village centers. The strategies here are review, evaluate, and consider changes to the form-based code zones, provide incentives, density bonuses, reduce parking requirements for mixed-use developments within designated village centers, encourage public-private partnerships to activate vacant or strategic village sites, and develop a coordinated signage and wayfinding strategy to highlight village centers, public amenities, etc. So each goal, and there are 5 of them, have these policies that are a little bit more specific, and then nestled in there are those strategies. And I won't go through each goal, as part of my presentation, but happy to take question on any of them and how we got there. These are the 5 goals focused on different areas, from natural resources, the villages and connectivity. Housing was a big topic of conversation at the workshops and the surveys. Growing a resilient local economy. And then 5 is where we kind of talk about, the town's infrastructure capacity and building resilient infrastructure and services. Related to this is the implementation table, and this is in the appendix of the plan, so I think it's one of the last 15 pages or so. And this is just kind of who's going to do it, when it's going to get done. And these are general. This is a requirement of the state that to have an implementation matrix that gives every strategy an ID, talks about the responsible parties, so town and community partners, town council and staff, town council planning board and staff. The time frame really varies from short, medium to long, ongoing, because a lot of this stuff has initiated over the last 6 to 8 months. And this implementation table is important because it's what makes the plan a living document. And just to, I won't hop back, but the way this plan should be used, and the state is encouraging it to be used, is a living document. We want annually the town council, planning board staff to be looking at this and saying, what's on the docket? What did we say in our town plan to do it? If we have something as a short term, and I'll pull one on the screen here, 1.2.3, which is protect open lands and water resources goal. In the policy for protect water resources in sensitive natural areas. And then 3 is promote enrollment in current tax programs, tree growth, farmland, through outreach and workshops for landowners. I think the town staff, town council can, that's a short-term goal. Let's do that next year. But on the flip side, if at the beginning of a goal setting, if you have something that's a long goal, and one of them here is exploring a transfer of development rights, that's something that we feel right now is more long-term and maybe not an immediate focus for the town. But if the town council wants to say, we can make that a priority, this document can change. You're not bound to it at the end of the day. But it puts all the goals and policies into one place. And that's really the big highlights of the plan. I will just wanted to open up for more conversation. But the things I'm not talking about here are the inventory chapters, because a lot of that is data from the town, data from the state, data from the committee, and other things that we've had to fill gaps. So a lot of that is just dense information. Happy to take questions about where do we source the data from, but I really wanted to focus kind of this is on how the plan is used, what's in there, and what does it look like. Is there anything I missed, Zach?
No, I think that was good.
Great, thank you. Before we turn it over to questions, I'd just like to express my gratitude for all the work that you guys have done. I know this is a lot here, and I know you spent a lot of time on it, and it's all volunteer time, so thank you very much for doing that. I know we have a lot of residents here, and there's only a few of you speaking for everybody, so I guess at this point we can open up to the public comments, if there are any questions. Seeing none, we'll move on to any questions from the council. Ms. Pomelo?
I don't have a question, but you guys did an amazing job, and you sure make councilors' jobs very easy when you put together reports like this. They might not remember your committee well, but they'll remember the council, and we'll get probably a lot more credit than we should when this finalizes, and that's sad because you guys worked your butts off, and we'll probably be the ones that remember when we pass this through the council months down the road. So thanks for all your time that you've put into this project.
I have a question about the Watchick Transition Corridor. Is all of Pine Tree Estates property included in that?
It was really just trying to capture the properties on 25. So, no, it was, I think that kind of grew as the plan, as we went along. We initially talked about the Leamington line to the roundabout as going into some kind of corridor, because that's already zoned business commercial. But in the end, we just kind of thought it made sense to extend it down and make it contiguous with the growth area. There are some commercial, more commercial properties on there, but I guess, the short answer is no. We didn't extend the whole into the Pine Tree Estates or anything.
Yeah, and a little bit more, I guess, a technical answer to that is that before 2020, growth areas typically weren't parcel bound. So you'll see these two growth areas here are now parcel bound, and that's mostly because of LD 2003. So a lot of the changes in the state legislature that kind of speaks about how development, single-family homes, ADUs work in a growth area, and it made sense, at least from a planning perspective, to make those parcel bound, so you're not running into issues with property owners that are split. With transition corridors, there's no state requirement, there's no local ordinances that really dictate it. It's more of just showing that this corridor currently partially serves as an economic area, and then when you look at it from a connection to the Standish Corner growth area to Leamington, that is a place that could be good for recreation, and we chose not to really capture any specific parcel, but mostly focus on the road. I did have something else to add too, and it just escaped me, so maybe it'll come back and I'll
I
let
have
you
a
know.
follow-up question. Does it change density requirements as far as residential housing in that area?
So that is what I was saying. So while future land use maps historically didn't, and still true, doesn't change zoning overnight. So just because this Standish Corner growth area, the town adopts this in a couple months, this doesn't become the zoning. However, with LD 2003 and now LD 1829, there are state statutes that talk about how residential developments operate in growth areas. So I can speak a little bit to LD 2003 about multiple properties on a property. I'm not sure how in-depth you guys went into LD 2003, but there is now at the state level requirements in a growth area or areas served by public utilities like water and sewer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Deacon Pingo.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Deacon.
Thank you, everyone that's worked on this. A lot of effort, I'm sure. One thing that strikes me is, so far, I have not seen anything that talks about sewer development or a map of water lines that exist. If we're going to develop industry where people can live and work in town, access to potable water is important. There should be a map of where the water district currently has its pipes and where we might work with them to expand that. And Standish, unlike other towns, does not have a public sewer system, and having a public sewer system would be significant in enhancing our ability to attract local industries. There are a lot of tiny towns in Maine that have sewer systems, much smaller than us, but we don't. That's significant, one, because of its adverse effect on our development, but also because we're near such a wonderful water resource, Sebago Lake. And I would think that the state, the water district, the town, and many other people would say, gee, you know, we have so many private septic systems, there might be an advantage in having a public sewer district surrounding the lake to protect the wonderful water supply that's there. One of the few in North America that essentially has no requirement for chemical treatment. They were required to add ultraviolet screening of water to filter out certain things, but basically the water quality is so good as it is that it's a treasure. And not having a public sewer system around the whole lake, including Standish, adversely impacts the future of the lake, I believe, as well as our industrial and economic and business development. We ought to have a public sewer system. If we want certain economic areas to grow, it would make sense to consider developing public sewer, as well as enhancing and preserving the water quality of the lake. So we need to think about, where are the public water supply pipes now? Where should we be putting a sewer system to protect the lake and to enhance business? So those are things that I think are important. Another thing that I believe, although there's references, certainly, you know, when people say, what do you like about living in Standish? And people say Sebago Lake is one of them. But I don't see essentially anything that talks about, you know, we have these